Have you ever wondered how a nation is born from the ashes of an empire? Today, we are journeying back in time to explore the dramatic story of Kenya, a tale of imperial ambition, fierce resistance, and the ultimate triumph of a people's will for freedom. Our story begins not in the rolling hills of Kenya, but in a conference room in Germany. It's 1885, and the Berlin Conference is underway. European powers are carving up Africa with ink and rulers on a map, with little regard for the people who live there. Kenya, or the territory that would become Kenya, falls under British influence. By 1895, the British East Africa Protectorate is officially declared. The scramble for Africa had arrived at its doorstep, and nothing would ever be the same again. To control their new territory and exploit the resources of Uganda further inland, the British embarked on a colossal engineering project, the Uganda Railway. Construction began in 1896 and was completed in 1901. It was an immense undertaking, built with the labour of thousands of imported Indian workers, many of whom tragically lost their lives. The British media dubbed it the lunatic line for its enormous cost and the immense challenges of its construction. But this railway was more than just a track. It was the artery of colonial settlement. As the line snaked its way from the port of Mombasa into the interior, it opened up the fertile highlands. This land, the traditional home of communities like the Kikuyu, the Maasai, the Kalenjin, and others, was seen as prime real estate. The British government actively encouraged white settlers to come and farm these lands. This led to a policy of land alienation, where vast, fertile tracts were forcibly taken from indigenous populations and reserved exclusively for Europeans, creating the so-called White Highlands. This dispossession of land became the central and most bitter grievance of the colonial era, a wound that would fester for decades and fuel the fire of resistance. With the settlers came a more formalised system of control. In 1920, the Protectorate became the Kenya Colony, a formal part of the British Empire. Life under colonial rule was harsh. Africans were subjected to forced labour on settler farms and infrastructure projects. A discriminatory pass system, known as the Kapande, was introduced. Every African male had to carry this document, which contained his personal details and employment history. It was a tool for controlling movement and labour, and a constant symbol of their subjugated status. But oppression always breeds resistance. In the 1920s, early nationalist movements began to emerge. One of the most prominent was the Young Kikuyu Association, founded in 1921 and later led by the charismatic Harry Thuku. They weren't calling for independence just yet, but they bravely protested against the Kapande system, forced labour, and further land seizures. Thuku's arrest in 1922 sparked massive protests in Nairobi, which were violently suppressed by colonial police. This event, however, only served to galvanise the nascent nationalist cause. The seeds of a larger struggle for freedom had been sown. The Second World War proved to be a major turning point. Thousands of Kenyan men were conscripted to fight for the British Empire across the globe, from Burma to the Middle East. They fought and died alongside Europeans, and this experience profoundly changed their worldview. They had fought for freedom and democracy abroad, and upon their return, they began to demand those same rights for themselves at home. The post-war years saw a surge in political activism and a growing, unified demand for self-determination. Into this charged atmosphere stepped a figure who would come to define Kenya's struggle, Jomo Kenyatta. After spending many years in Europe, where he studied and lobbied for his people's rights, Kenyatta returned to Kenya in 1946. A year later, in 1947, he took leadership of the Kenya African Union, or KAU. With his powerful oratory and intellectual prowess, he transformed KAU into a formidable mass political party, uniting various ethnic groups under the common goal of uhuru, the Swahili word for freedom. The call for independence was now louder and more organised than ever before. But as peaceful political avenues seemed to lead to dead ends, a more radical and militant movement was gaining momentum, particularly among the landless Kikuyu people in the Central Highlands. This was the Land and Freedom Army, better known to the world as the Mau Mau. The Mau Mau was a secret society that bound its members through powerful oaths, a guerrilla movement fighting to reclaim their stolen land and expel the British through armed struggle. From 1952, they launched a series of attacks against colonial officials, white settlers, and African loyalists. The colonial government responded with overwhelming force. In October 1952, they declared a state of emergency. Jomo Kenyatta and 5 other prominent nationalist leaders, who became known as the Kapenguria Six, were arrested and falsely accused of leading the Mau Mau. Despite a lack of evidence, they were convicted in a sham trial and imprisoned. The counterinsurgency against the Mau Mau was brutal. Over 1 million Africans, mostly Kikuyu, were forced into concentration camps, euphemistically called protected villages. Torture, collective punishment, and summary executions were widespread. The uprising, which officially ended in 1960, was one of the bloodiest conflicts of decolonization in Africa. While the Mau Mau were militarily defeated, their struggle made the cost of maintaining colonial rule in Kenya unbearable for the British. The sheer brutality and immense financial cost of suppressing the Mau Mau uprising, coupled with growing international condemnation, forced a major shift in British policy. The wind of change was blowing across Africa, and Britain could no longer hold back the tide of nationalism. The decision was made to negotiate a path to independence. The key to this transition were the Lancaster House conferences held in London between 1960 and 1963. These were a series of complex and often tense negotiations between the British government, the white settler representatives, and various African nationalist delegations, including the two main parties CONU, led by figures like Jomo Kenyatta, once he was released, and KADU. The primary goal was to draft a new constitution for an independent Kenya. The main point of contention was the structure of the new state. CONU favoured a strong central government, while KADU and the settlers advocated for a more federal system to protect minority rights. After much debate and compromise, a constitution was agreed upon, paving the way for majority rule. The final steps towards freedom came quickly. In May 1963, Kenya held its first multiracial, one-person, one-vote general election. Jomo Kenyatta's KONU party won a decisive victory. On June 1, 1963, Kenya achieved internal self-government, with Kenyatta becoming its first prime minister. The moment the nation had fought and bled for was finally at hand. On the midnight of December 12, 1963, in a packed stadium in Nairobi, the Union Jack was lowered for the last time, and the new, vibrant flag of Kenya was raised. The crowd erupted in a roar of celebration. Uhuru had been won. Jomo Kenyatta, the man who had been imprisoned as a leader to darkness and death, was now the father of a new nation. Exactly 1 year later, on December 12, 1964, Kenya became a republic, severing its last constitutional ties to Britain, with Kenyatta serving as its first president. The journey from the Berlin Conference of 1885 to Uhuru in 1963 was long, painful, and complex. The legacy of colonialism is deep and enduring. The arbitrary borders drawn by Europeans, the economic structures designed for extraction, the deep scars left by the dispossession of land and the violence of the emergency. These are challenges that modern Kenya continues to grapple with. Yet, the story of Kenya's independence is also a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the unquenchable desire for freedom and self-determination. It is a story of immense sacrifice, a reminder that freedom is never freely given, but won. Uhuru was not just an event, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one that the people of Kenya continue to write for themselves every single day. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. If you found this video insightful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into world history. Let us know in the comments what part of Kenya's story you found most compelling. Until next time.